guys, so today I'm going to be sharing what I'm going to be reading in December and January. So this is my favorite TBR to create. So I love collecting books throughout the entire year and kind of saving them for a time when I can be curled up by the fire under a blanket with a hot cup of tea and have a blanket of snow already outside and probably more snow falling. And so I wanted to share with you the books that I am planning on reading through the Christmas season and into winter. So at the top of my TBR list is Upon a Frosted Star by M.A. Kuzniar. This copy is gorgeous. I actually pre-ordered it through Waterstones and managed to get a copy that is signed, which is really nice. So I love Midnight in Everwood. I just shared my love of that as a Nutcracker retelling in a previous video that I did. This has just been released and it is the Swan Lake Ballet retelling. She does put a twist on this in that there is this Great Gatsby 1920s setting that she has placed this story in. One of the things that I have come to love with her books is the lyrical writing, the ballet tie-in, the romance, the female friendships, the winter vibes. And so I am hoping that through her Swan Lake retelling in this, that I will get all of that. She just writes a beautiful winter aesthetic, and while a lot of her critics will say that the pacing might be a little bit off, that it might be a little bit slower than maybe some people would like, I actually really enjoyed that part of Midnight in Everwood, and so I'm just hoping that this stays in her wheelhouse of all those things that I've mentioned. Just through reading the blurb on the back and even what's on the front, that this will just be perfect for that winter snowy vibe that I am seeking out. A Soul as Cold as Frost by Jennifer Kropf has been on my TBR list for years. It's actually pretty difficult to find a used copy, which is probably part of the reason. So this is very much Christmas themed as well as winter. I do think that it is a Christian fiction, but I'm not 100% sure. But this kind of throws all of the Christmas folklore and legend into the tale. And so that would include Saint Nicholas, Christmas Carol's Scrooge, the Snow Queen, I think also the Nutcracker. And so this is the story of a girl named Helen who is living her somewhat impoverished life, and she starts to notice fae folk that seem to be kind of seeping into their world through the cracks, and she discovers this other realm or land called Winter, and it is being ruled by this very cruel queen who forces her people to fight, I think almost gladiator style, in this, it is called the Quarrel of Sword and Bone. So it's almost like, it reminds me of like Hunger Games, but make it Christmas. And so this is the first in a series. I think there are 4 books in the series, but I could be wrong. But I hope that this can act as a standalone. So we'll see how much of it resolves within just this first book. Rebel Angels by Libba Bray is the Gemma Doyle book number 2 in her series of, I think it's a trilogy. And this is set in Christmas time. And so the premise within the first book is very kind of gray academia. We have Gemma Doyle, who is a student at an all-girls academy called Spence Academy. And this is the school that her mother went to. But however, Gemma's mother died before she started attending this school under mysterious circumstances. And as Gemma learns more and more about the Spence Academy, she's realizing that there is more to the school than just being a finishing school for ladies. The first book is really great to start with in the fall, and you can follow this right up with this second book that is set at Christmas, and it is full of forbidden romance, magic with consequences, other realms that you have to travel to. There is, following someone's destiny and trying to find out what your destiny is, trying to unravel the mystery of her mother's death, peril, all of that in that first novel. And so I'm hoping that the second one brings all of that in with this Christmas, New Year's, winter feel as well. Part of the reason why I say this is December and January is because a lot of these are very thick novels. So this next adult fantasy is over 600 pages. It is Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. And M.A. Carrick is a pen name for two friends who wrote this together, Marie Brennan and Alec Helms. This is a very, from what I can tell, complex adult fantasy. This is a story of this conniving con artist who, as the cover shows, has, masquerades her way into a life that she is really kind of ill prepared for, I think, with treacherous houses of nobility, feuds, and alternate identities. There is, I think, romance in this as well, but a very well-developed magic system and world building is what I'm expecting with this adult fantasy. I think there is a lot of political intrigue. I think there are a lot of twists in the plot, and there is also within that magic element this concept of nightmares that are invading, like literal you're asleep nightmares that are invading the population. I was probably most swayed by the cover and thinking that this looks like a perfect read for New Year's. So we will see if I can get through all 630 some pages. Next is my adult lit fic pick, which is Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. So I read Kindred and the graphic novel by Octavia Butler and really enjoyed the sci-fi, morally gray viewpoint that she gave in that book. I thought it was phenomenal. And so part of the reason why I am choosing Parable of the Sower to start with at the beginning of the year, because again, this is probably not very winter themed like all the rest of my books, but it actually starts in 2024. And I thought that kind of made it fun. So it actually goes over a 3-year period. So while part of it starts in 2024, I think most of it is years down the road. But this is, I think people call it dystopian. It's very kind of apocalyptic story, but I think Octavia Butler turns it on its end and she keeps some parts of the infrastructure while others of it has completely fallen apart, and we end up having this violent society. There is a girl named Parable who is living in LA in this compound that her pastor father has established to kind of protect them from the violence. But of course, that compound and protection breaks down eventually, and Parable has to go out into the world. And she kind of discovers how raw and harsh the world is. But I think there is an underlying theme of hope. I'm hoping that there is. This is actually the first book in her Earthseed, I think, trilogy. So it'll be interesting to see how much I want to continue the series. I do think this is an examination of religion and how that plays a part in our society. And I think it really calls into question, how do you react when your culture, your society, the world that you're living in breaks down? Do you pull yourself in and protect yourself, or do you act as a martyr or go out into the world and see what you can do to make change? So we will see how this goes to read to kick off 2024 in a book that is starting in 2024. For middle grade, I have Absolutely Truly by Heather Voigt Frederick. This is a Pumpkin Falls mystery. Our main character is 12-year-old Truly Lovejoy. Her family is running a bookstore that has been in her family for like 100 years, decades. And it does have some heavy content in that her father, I think, has PTSD or was injured in an IUD when he was fighting in Afghanistan. But as her family is kind of running this bookstore and they're all kind of trying to figure out life with their father back from war, Truly discovers a letter in, I think, Charlotte's Web book that leads her down into this mystery and treasure hunt. And it's, for a middle grade, it's pretty thick, which I'm excited about, just like this floppy paperback book. It's, I think, heartwarming and delves in family relationships as well as friendship. And I'm just excited to start this series. I think there are 4 books in this series. The author actually wrote the Mother-Daughter Book Club series. This is a separate one, obviously. And I think the one that got published this year is her last one in this series. But the cover is just so perfect for a cozy read. The Clockwork Crow by Catherine Fisher is also a middle grade, and it is also the first book in a series. And so this features a Christmas setting, winter, cold vibes. It has a kind of, to me, a steampunk feel because it's got this mechanical crow that I think talks. And our main character, Saren, is traveling to this kind of remote mansion. And so it gives me kind of winter house vibes, which is another really lovely middle grade Christmas setting book. But this has fae magic, a missing child, and a journey that our main character needs to go on to, I guess, help the child. But you can just see it's so blustery and snowflakes and wintry and cold looking, and it's pretty thin, which hopefully will balance out some of these thicker tomes. And I'm really excited to read this sitting in front of our Christmas tree. The Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper is a middle grade novel that won the Newbery Honor Book Award in 1974. This is a fantasy series. This is the first one in that series. And this one is set during the 12 days of Christmas. And so we follow Will Stanton, who is in Britain. Although there is magic and fantasy in Britain, it is set in our world. And Will travels through the 12 days of Christmas with his family and with other supporting characters, and has to balance between an evil that is slowly encroaching upon their world and keeping good and joy in the world. And so I think there are books with puzzles that he needs to figure out, and old kings with old magic. And there is a solid fantasy feel to this book, as is evident by the illustrations in it. And I may actually choose this as a read aloud with my kids for our family read aloud, or I might just read it myself. So Heather Fawcett, who wrote Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, also has a whole bunch of middle grade books. And I have read The School Between Winter and Fairyland and loved it. And so I decided to try another one of her middle grades. This is Ember and the Ice Dragons. Ember is a dragon turned girl. And as she's living in, I think in London, she increasingly is spurting fire when she can't control her emotions, I think. And so it's determined by her family that she can travel with, I think, her aunt to Antarctica for like scientific experiments. And so there's this journey to Antarctica. I think there is, humorous scenes with penguins, there's avalanches and ice storms, but I think everything comes to a head when Ember realizes that there is this annual dragon hunt, and she feels like, as a dragon at the core, that she needs to save her fellow dragons without obviously putting herself in peril and letting anyone human know that she herself is a dragon. So I am excited to see if Ember can thwart the hunters and save the ice dragons. So when I find an author that I really enjoy, I usually try to read as much of their breadth of work as I can. And using Pengo, I found this series also by Heather Fawcett. And this is one of her earlier duologies. This is the first one of the two. And this is called Even the Darkest Stars. And so this is set in, I think, the Himalayas. There's Nepalese culture. And again, because it's in the Himalayas, she just really seems to do that cold atmosphere really well. Every book that I've read of hers brings that cold into it, and I love it. I think she's Canadian, so that would make sense. So this follows two sisters who are climbers, like mountain climbers, and they seem to be a little bit competitive, and they are on a quest, on a journey to climb this specific mountain. So again, there's avalanches, I think, and ice storms and all kinds of peril. And I do think the sister relationship gets explored. I think there is romance in here. I'm not sure though. But I mean, their climbing experience is deadly and terrifying. The reviews do say that it is very slow paced. It is a journey tale. And so some people really don't like, a book where you're just journeying through the whole thing. I happen to love that. And I also don't mind a slow pace as long as there is really solid character development and world building and just a lot of themes to explore. And so again, because I've liked her other books, I am excited to give this a try. Well, I'm gonna have to go warm up my tea because I've been here chatting and I have let my tea grow cold. But please feel free to leave in the comments what books that you're looking forward to reading this December and January, whether it is winter themed and Christmas season setting, or just the latest book that you are excited to read. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.